Red River is a technology transformation company. They reimagine the possibilities of technology, enabling organizations to transform beyond the expected. From the cloud and as a service to collaboration and cybersecurity, Red River can meet your mission goals and business objectives. With more than 25 years' experience serving business and government, they deliver the innovative solutions that power your success. Technology decisions aren't black and white. Think red. Visit redriver.com to learn more. Red River is a technology transformation company. They reimagine the possibilities of technology, enabling organizations to transform beyond the expected. From the cloud and as a service to collaboration and cybersecurity, Red River can meet your mission goals and business objectives. With more than 25 years' experience serving business and government, they deliver the innovative solutions that power your success. Technology decisions aren't black and white. Think red. Visit redriver.com to learn more.
This is the Skate Podcast on WEEI.com and the radio.com app.
Bobby Orr behind the net to Sanderson. Orr! Bobby Orr!
For the first time in 39 years, the Boston Bruins have won the Stanley Cup.
Talking Bruins and NHL.
Sure, old-time hockey, like Eddie Shore. Yeah.
With writer and producer Brian D. Felice.
Brian D. Felice is an emerging talent.
Bridget Prue.
Saw Jack after in the intermission, and he was still so angry about the hit.
Burn him! And WEEI.com Bruins writer Scott McLaughlin.
Hey, Scott!
Lace him up for some Bees talk right now.
I'm looking at
It's the Skate Pod on WEEI.
Welcome to the Skate Podcast, episode 46, Trade Deadline Edition. I'm Brian D. Felice, joined alongside Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin once again. Guys, we'll just dive right into it. So, late last night into the early morning, Bruins signed or trade for Mike Riley of the Ottawa Senators for a 2022 third-round draft pick. And then, obviously, later on, they traded Anders Bjork and a 2021 second-rounder to the Sabres for Taylor Hall.
Which was really, it ended up kind of burying the first trade in terms of what people were talking about, what people cared about. I think both trades addressed the problems that they needed to fix. And I think altogether, the moves, which happened, like an hour maybe apart from each other, they both showed that Sweeney is ready to invest in this team and really trying to make this team be able to have a deep run.
Yeah, and just to finish off the trade, they also got Curtis Lazar in that deal as well. So,
Sorry.
Scott, your preliminary thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was a really good deadline for Don Sweeney. It was a team that kind of had to pick a direction. Like, either they were in and they were making another run, or it was time to start turning things over for the future. And you're in a playoff spot. You should be in the playoffs. I know the Rangers, Flyers are still kind of there. I think Rangers are a little more dangerous. But you have, 6 games left against the Sabres. Like, you should be making the playoffs, and if you're in the playoffs, you should have a chance if you make moves to improve your team. And that's what Don Sweeney did. He made moves that improved the team. We can get into whether they solve the issues, whether they put them, quote-unquote, over the top. I don't think they're that kind of the moves, but I think they're moves that have the potential to really help you and really give you a chance. Yes, there's a gamble there, but there always is with a trade. Like, we can get into Taylor Hall obviously having a poor offensive season, especially in terms of goal scoring. He has just 2 goals. He has his career low shooting percentage. He has just not been able to put pucks in the net. He has not been able to finish. So, yeah, there's some risk there. You're bringing him in, ideally to play on your second line, next to David Krejci. I know, they haven't announced as of Monday afternoon. We don't know exactly how they're going to line up, but that's kind of where we're thinking he'll put him to start.
Which would be an improvement to have someone like Krejci next to you to set you up. When you've gone to teams in the past, after he is originally drafted, he ends up on teams like Buffalo where he kind of just has a stagnant offense, and he doesn't have necessarily the setup guy that he gets with David Krejci.
Well, he had Jack Eichel to start this season, and Eichel then got injured and has missed a lot of time, but their chemistry was never there. So even, Hall has not had much support in Buffalo for the last month and a half or whatever it's been, But even when he was on a line with Eichel, they just were not clicking. They were not producing. So, it's not just about supporting cast. Like, he has to own some of this. What's interesting about putting him with Krejci is they're both sort of setup guys first. Like, I don't know sort of what Bruins fans have as an impression of Hall, but he's really been more of a setup guy. He creates chances. He creates scoring chances, but he's not a great finisher. He's never been like a natural goal scorer. He's never really been like a sniper. The one year he had 39 goals. That was his MVP year in New Jersey. It's the only year he broke 30, and 24 of those goals came on the power play. So
because of a great screen from Jimmy Hayes in front.
Yeah. But yeah, because the power play was basically built around him, it was built around getting him chances.
Yep.
So, don't expect a sniper. That's not who he is, and especially with the way that his finishing has dropped off recently, it's not who he's going to be, but he will create chances.
And he has very similar statistics to Krejci this season. He's got 2 goals and 17 assists, which is very, very similar to Krejci. And, but together, on the power play, I could see him being able to help on the second unit.
Yeah, well, it would have to be the second unit based off of how they used him in New Jersey. In New Jersey, as a lefty, they put him on his strong side, right? So that's where Pasta, as a righty, sets up for the one-timer. So there would be some conflict of interest there. So, it would be the second unit if they want him to do what he did in New Jersey. Just quickly, my initial thoughts when all this went down last night was I was just stunned. The fact that you addressed 3 team needs, Taylor Hall for the bona fide top 6 forward when he's playing to his game. Mike Riley, left shot defenseman. We'll get into him a little bit later. And then as well as Curtis Lazar, who brings a lot of sandpaper and grit that you'll want in a playoff series. But I'm looking at these moves, and Don Sweeney made these acquisitions without giving up a first rounder, without giving up a top prospect, and without giving up an impact regular roster player. So, you give up a second, a third, and Bjork for Hall, Lazar, and Mike Riley. To me, it's if it doesn't work out, okay, it doesn't work out. It's low risk, high reward. And in the NHL at the trade deadline, you're either in it to win it right now, or you're in it to win it a later day. And the Bruins and Don Sweeney, they're clearly in it to win it right now, as they should be, as we've discussed.
Yeah, the trades in a vacuum, just looking at, okay, what you gave up, what you got, are unmitigated wins.
And they don't even have to take on the full contract
Yeah.
for Taylor Hall.
Right.
They're taking only half of it.
So they made the cap dynamics work. They didn't even have to use long-term IR space. They actually made it work just under the regular salary cap. So, look, I don't know if it makes them a Stanley Cup contender, but it gives guys reason to believe. It gives them, reason to look at and say, okay, we're going for it. Our general manager believes in us. He went out, got us help. Now let's go out there and make our playoff run.
And you know who I think this helps most is Taylor Hall. Because, he's going to come in and really want to prove that this was just a season that Buffalo had given up on, and guys there had kind of given up around him, and that this is not what he can actually bring. That what you saw in Buffalo was just, throw that out. I'm going to have a clean slate on a team that is, right above the playoff bubble. So I think he's going to be really motivated to kick it up a notch. I think maybe this helps him more than anyone else.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
I mean, you would hope so. If it's not, then what is he doing? What is his career? He's never been on a team this good. He's been on teams he was on a Devils team that barely made it to the playoffs. By the way, made it because of him. That was the year he was the MVP.
Yep.
But wasn't close to a cup contender. Was on an Arizona team last year that wouldn't have been in the playoffs in a normal year. Got in because it expanded to 12 teams in the bubble. But yeah, he's never been on a team like this. So if this doesn't motivate him, if it doesn't get him going, then obviously that would say a lot about him and not particularly good.
And I want to take this is probably the perfect time to play a little bit of that audio of him talking about how he felt about playing in Buffalo and about how he felt coming to the Bruins.
It was such a whirlwind of a year that, that just, it went pretty badly, obviously. We started off our first 10 games, we were about 500, and then we had the COVID outbreak, and we couldn't get our footing after that. And for myself, obviously, wasn't the season that I would have liked to have, not even close. So these last few days was, you do some soul searching and you look back on what you could do better and look forward to the future. And obviously I'm so happy and excited to be a part of the Bruins, and I can't wait to play, and I can't wait to be a part of a group like that.
Yeah, so Bridget, like you said a minute ago, you have to take Hall and Buffalo and throw it out the window. It's not relevant. You take it with a grain of salt. If you're a Bruins fan, you have to expect that won't be the case. When you're in Buffalo this year, Taylor Hall's plus minus was abysmal, along with the rest of the team. He was like minus 20, over minus 20. But when your defense is so porous and you're not able to defend in your own end or transition to offense, obviously that's going to affect every forward's game. And so, as Scott mentioned, yeah, Hall isn't scoring at the rate he wants to, but he is generating. So you put him in the Boston system with the elite players that Boston has to offer. Krejci's probably not elite anymore, obviously, but he's certainly a very, very strong number 2 center, and Hall will get some ice time with the top guys at points as well. So I do wanted to transition to how Hall and Lazar, mainly Hall, will impact the forward group and what that will look like. So, I'll go first. Basically, I've talked about in the past how anytime the Bruins go on a cup run, you need 3 lines that can jump over the boards and score. And the acquisition of Taylor Hall specifically absolutely gives the Bruins that depth now, and everybody else is allowed to fall into place. No longer is Nick Ritchie going to be, and he's played well, but no longer is Nick Ritchie going to be asked to play, top 6 minutes, ideally. Craig Smith still may play top 6 minutes, but ideally, those guys can slide down to your third line. And when your third line, Craig Smith has 22 points on the year now. Nick Ritchie has 20. So when you have your third liners putting up those points, that's true scoring depth. I think Curtis Lazar, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him too much, but a few years ago when he was in Calgary, they played the Oilers in a Battle of Alberta playoff series. And Curtis Lazar was an absolute honey badger. He was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and he was making an impact. He was finishing checks. He was getting in the face of the star players on Edmonton. And I believe Calgary won that series. And when you look at the teams that the Bruins are going to have to go through, like Washington with Garnett Hathaway and Tom Wilson, and the Islanders with Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin, and Casey Cizikas, and Tampa Bay with Barclay Goudreau and I think Paquette's gone actually now, but Yanni Gourde. These are players that Curtis Lazar will thrive going afterwards, and you put him on a fourth line with a Trent Frederick and then maybe a Sean Corrali. That's a pretty antagonizing fourth line. So everybody falls into place now.
That's the kind of fourth line the Bruins are used to having, and on the teams that have made deep playoff runs, that's the way that fourth line is made up. Think about in 2011, they had Sean Thornton. They have, all of these grinders on the fourth line, and that's just kind of how they want that line to be built. Recently, with all the carousel of rotating rookies and inexperienced players that they've had up there, those were mostly speed guys, skill guys, and just Frederick, who actually wasn't even on the fourth line to begin the season and has been, cycled through the other lines. This is more the look that they have gone with in the past and had success with when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, and Lazar has some offensive pop, too. 9 points this season, which isn't a lot, but if you look at the guys who have been on the Bruins' fourth line who have 3, 4, 5 points, guy has 5 goals so far, has a little bit of offensive talent, and like you mentioned, the way he plays, it helps bring some identity to that fourth line that we've talked about before that it hasn't really had this season, in part because guys like Corrali and Wagner, haven't really been playing the games that they've played in the past. They've rotated in all these different guys.
Senyshyn, Bjork, Studnicka. You just name any of the guys that have been in and out of the lineup, and they've all been cycling into that fourth line role, and no identity, as you said, was created, and this could give them a chance. Granted, Frederick needs to come back from his illness. You need to make sure Corrali stays consistent there in the center. Not that they really have a different option that they could go to there, but I think this means for Wagner, this might mean very limited playing time.
Yeah, he's probably your 13th or 14th forward, which is kind of what he's been for a little bit here. I think he had a stretch of 5 straight healthy scratches. So, but he hasn't. I don't think he's really earned a regular role this season, and you're not going to get one given to you. So,
and he's He's starting to try. He's getting the message. I mean, obviously, their last game against Washington, which we won't even bother to talk about because their decor was literally not even dressed. He gets in a fight off the opening faceoff, so he knows, that he has to.
That's a telltale sign. I'm
fighting...
responding in, in a very physical, in-your-face kind of way.
Now, Brendan Dillon used to play for San Jose, and Wagner was out in Anaheim with the Ducks, so there may have been a history there, but you don't just see those two randomly go off the opening faceoff.
Right.
There's something.
Yeah, I think Wagner was, maybe partly to prove himself and try to do something, but I think also, and I think the Nesson broadcast mentioned this, you have so many young guys in on defense, second of a back-to-back. It was probably an easy game, and as it turned out, it was an easy game for the Bruins to just be way off and not have their energy. So I think he was probably trying to get something going and set a tone, and obviously it didn't work. They got, their teeth kicked in that game.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you knew it was going to be bad, but that bad, it was just, it ended up going from bad to sad pretty quickly.
And I mean,
hopefully, if anything, it just helped Don get on the, Don had been working the phones in the morning, so it's been reported. So
this Hall trade has clearly been in the works. This deal with Hall has been in the works the whole year, I would imagine.
And Hall, in his press conference on Monday, basically said, when I found out that I might get traded a couple weeks ago, the Bruins were at the top of his list. So you could tell, talks were happening then, and he had told Kevin Adams, Buffalo's GM, hey, if I'm getting traded, I want to go to Boston, try to make it work with Boston. He talked about how he almost signed here in the offseason as a free agent.
Yeah, why don't we go to that audio right now?
And going back to the offseason, how close were you with the Bruins in discussions?
Yeah, I mean, really close. I was ready to come to Boston. It didn't work out, and then I was, I had to choose between some other options, but I've always had a ton of respect for the Bruins organization and the city of Boston. I came here with I came to Boston with Seguin in 2010, just before our draft, and I love the city. I love the fan base and the way they care about hockey. And every time I've come to Boston since then, I've always really enjoyed my time there. So it's a city that I have a lot of, respect for as a sports city, and I can't wait to get there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a history. I mean, I can remember 11 years ago now in the 2010 draft, it was Tyler versus Taylor, Hall versus Sagan, who was going to go to Boston, who was going to go to Edmonton. And
sounds like they both wanted to go to Boston.
Yeah, probably. And, obviously Sagan goes to Boston, and, we had that experience. And now here we are 11 years later, and now we get to see what it would be like with Taylor Hall, obviously a little bit older. But, I think, speaking for myself in the offseason, when he went to Buffalo, from a Bruins perspective, I thought that was it. He goes to Buffalo, he plays well, the Sabres do well, he won't be available. And the Bruins probably felt the same way as the year got underway. Obviously, that changed going forward as the season went along. But I don't think the Bruins anticipated Taylor Hall being available at the trade deadline. And I think somewhere along the way, that became a possibility. And, another guy that they got, Mike Riley. These are guys that, I didn't anticipate being available for the Bruins. But so when we're talking in the past about, potential deadline acquisitions, we're talking about Kyle Palmieri and, Goligoski and Ekholm and Edler and all these guys.
Looking back at the conversations we had previous to this, the Goligoski move to sign him, I'm so glad. I prefer the Mike Riley move. It was at the time we were thinking the Bruins were in a situation where they needed to be a little bit more desperate than it turned out they needed to be, because they had offers that they were working on behind closed doors that were more, I would say, more cap friendly, more solid in terms of where these guys would fit in and how the role that they would be able to play. So the Goligoski stuff and different Zajac and Palmieri, I don't know about you guys, but the Zajac Palmieri deal, in my mind, wasn't the best of the two options if you're talking about Hall and Lazar.
Well, I think the Islanders definitely got better, and I think getting
they did, but
getting Palmieri and Zajac and only giving up one first-round pick and no top prospect, I still think that was a good deal. So,
for the Bruins, what was the fit?
I think Palmieri would have been a good fit, but I think if the Bruins were going to deal with the Devils, it probably would. no pun intended. If the Bruins were going to make a deal in New Jersey, I think it would have been something similar before Palmieri and Kolikov, who ended up getting moved for a 4th-round pick. Because I think they wanted the 1 forward, 1 defense. They ended up with 2 forwards and 1 defense. But, yeah, I mean, Riley's a nice get. Like, I guess we can get into him now, but I
want you to hold off on a few minutes on him.
Okay.
I won't, so but keep going.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that was a nice get. In Hall, I don't know. I think teams, including the Bruins, probably had it in the back of their minds that he might be available again, and I think even Hall might have kind of known. He sort of hinted at that in his press conference on Monday, where he was saying, like, I didn't expect to go to Buffalo and win a Stanley Cup this year, but I thought we were going to build something. I thought we were going to get momentum going in the right direction. And he even mentioned, like, and then I thought, I'd have a decision around trade deadline if I wanted to stick here or if I was going to be available in a trade. So I think even in the back of his mind, he kind of knew, like, if this doesn't work out in Buffalo, I can just get moved to another team at the deadline.
Well, I'm really surprised that Buffalo has had the year they've had because, they have pieces in place. I mean, you have Rasmus Dahlin, Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart.
But they ruin all their young defensemen.
I know, but what I'm saying is, Ristolainen's
they moved
there too.
Montour.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Taylor Hall looked at them in the offseason and probably said to himself, okay, this is a team that's kind of on the rise towards playoffs, right? And so, and also, Bridget and I were talking before we started recording. It sounds like, based off of Hall's comments to the media, that in the offseason, Boston was his first choice. But maybe you can explain why they never ended up coming to fruition. And because he commented that he ended up choosing between other teams that didn't work out.
Yeah.
Maybe you can enlighten us on why. But it sounds like in a perfect world, he would have wanted to go to Boston over Buffalo.
I think the Bruins just weren't going to go high enough to make it, maybe he would have gone, so he signs 1 year, $8 million with Buffalo. Maybe he would have done $7 million with Boston. But I don't think they went that high. I think if they I don't know if they officially made an offer or not, but I think their talks were probably for something less than that. It was probably like, hey, if your cost comes down and, you just want to go to a good team, we're here. But the Bruins weren't going to be the top bidder. So I think he was probably hoping that their price came up a little bit. They probably both agreed, like, hey, we're not really particularly close in terms of the financial value of this deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he looked at other options, and he took, Buffalo was probably the most he was going to get for 1 year. And the big multi-year deal wasn't out there for him. We know flat cap, teams are up against it, all that. So he probably figured, I'll get the money for 1 year. He probably looked at Buffalo. Even beyond the rest of the roster, he probably thought, I'm playing with Jack Eichel, I'm going to put up numbers.
Bingo.
And obviously it didn't work out, but I think he thought, like, okay, even if I'm not going to make a playoff run, even if this isn't going to be my cup run season, I'll put up numbers and I'll be able to cash in next year.
Yeah.
Or if things go south, I get moved at the deadline. So that's what ended up happening.
So I think it's, Hall's in Boston now. Okay, so I think listeners now want to hear from us. How does this affect the team, right? So what can the Bruins lineup when healthy tend to look like? I think that's a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, is it with Krejci, is it with Bergeron, is it a third line with Coyle? What could their lineup look like? And, you guys brought up Palmieri earlier. I was cool with getting Palmieri for the right price, but the itch that he did not scratch for me was that there's a lack of speed with Palmieri. And I didn't think the Bruins needed to have anybody else that was Krejci speed. Like, I think the Bruins needed to get some more speed in their lineup. Marchand can skate, Pasta can skate. Richie's not the fleetest of foot. Krejci's not the fleetest of foot in their top six. So, like, they needed some infusion of speed, obviously. And I think Hall brings that. So, I want to throw a few potential combinations at you guys and get your feedback, all right? So, there's the Brian billboard, or whatever it's called, draft board, whatever you want to call it, lineup board. So I have Marchand with Bergeron and Pasternak. Okay, this is preliminary. Like, we can go back and forth, but these are the initial combos that came to my head. So you want to call it the perfection line? Keep them there. Okay. Hall on the left, Krejci in the center, put DeBrusk on his offside on the right. Richie on the left, Coyle at center, Smith on the right. Frederick on the left, Corrali at center, Lazar on the right. On the contrary, another combination I saw on Twitter was keeping Smith with Bergeron and Pasternak, keeping Smith with Bergeron and Marchand, doing Hall, Krejci, Pasta.
I
This
love
is
that
what I
idea.
like.
Richie,
I
Coyle,
love that
DeBrusque.
idea.
And then the fourth line was similar to what I had. And I found that interesting because I was like, I think on a cup contending team, on a cup winning team, I want Craig Smith on my third line. But if you can create like a dynamic line with Krejci, Hall, and Pasta, and then have Bergeron and Marchand carry their weight, and Smith, as we've seen,
And
has
Smith,
done really well with them.
He
have
has
options.
chemistry with them, and he has the speed similar to Pasternak, and he knows how to crash the net. He's in the right places when he plays with that line, and they kind of elevate his play a little bit. I liked when the Bruins had Smith up on the first line and Pasternak on the second line with Krejci, and I think Hall on one wing and Pasternak on the other wing, it's just going to be completely different it's going to be a shock to teams that have played the Bruins the whole season, and they've kind of gotten used to what they're going to be able to expect, and that's a totally different dynamic they're going to have to be able to play defense on.
Yeah, I mean, especially like if you're looking to head to, say, an Islanders matchup where the Islanders are a team that's been able to kind of key in on your top line. Now you're throwing a whole new look at them, and they're saying, oh, okay, which line are we keying on? What are we putting our big defensive guns against? I think if Hall and Krejci are together, which, again, is what we expect, I think you need a shooter as that third player on the line because, as we mentioned, those two are setup guys first and foremost. They're not snipers. So I want to get the goal scorer who's going to finish off the chances that they're creating. Obviously, Pasternak is the best you have in that category. I would be okay with Smith there. He's, not quite the sniper that Pasternak is, but he's a shooter.
Not DeBrusque.
Yeah, that's why I don't want DeBrusque there because I don't think DeBrusque shoots enough. I don't think he gets his shot off quickly enough. I'm putting DeBrusque on the third line for now, and Coyle with. So I guess in my world, with Bridget I'm putting Smith on the top line because that's worked. I'm going with the loaded up second line that gives teams a different look. And then, Coyle with Richie and DeBrusque, whoever's on left or right. Now, that's a line that's going to need to find some chemistry because I think Coyle and Richie in the past haven't really clicked. Coyle and DeBrusque haven't really clicked. So there's some work that's going to be required there, and that might not
a lot of time.
That might not be how it ends up. We'll see how long of a run they get, but that's kind of where I feel like that's where those guys need to be. Like, sorry, DeBrusque, you haven't played well enough to earn your way back up to a top two line. Richie, you've played pretty well, but third line is probably really where he should be on a team that's going to make a deep run.
And there's also guys that Cassidy's going to slot in. If DeBrusque isn't working, say he is on that third line with Coyle. If DeBrusque isn't working, Coleman is somebody that I think that he might try there just to see if the speed factor that he can get with him. And by the way, Coleman in the games that he's played has really shown his offensive ability in terms of how much he is aggressive when it comes to his offense. So I think maybe you see Coleman up there. There's maybe Frederick even.
I like Coleman as a player. I think he works his ass off. Personally, I don't see him cracking the top 9 unless Cassidy tries to send somebody in the top 9 a message.
That's what could happen with DeBrusque.
Or there's severe injuries. I know, but when you have a Stanley Cup on the line, you're going to want to put your best players.
And I'm more talking about this is something they would try out before they end up in the playoffs. And granted, that's assuming they aren't right up against it in a dogfight at the end of the season.
And to the point we're making, like Cassidy's going to have some patience with these new combinations, whatever they are. So figure out what you want to have, figure out what you think is going to work best, and then don't overreact if it doesn't work right away. Whether it's Hall with Krejci or a new look third line or whatever it is, in general, Cassidy has not always been the most patient when it comes to keeping lines together or giving them time to figure it out. And yes, I know as we've mentioned, we're in the stretch run. It's crunch time. There's not a ton of time, but you're going to have to give it more than 2 games and then be like, oh, well, Krejci and Hall doesn't work together.
So the alternative lineup that you guys seem to be in favor of with Smith in the top line, Krejci with Hall and Pasternak, DeBrusque in the third line. Here are my reservations about that. Number one, the Jake DeBrusk of 2018, he did shoot the puck a lot, and like that's his ceiling, that's his potential. So if he's playing to his capabilities, he can be that shooter. Now I understand how he's played this year. I've been the first one to knock him. I'm just saying he seems to slowly but surely starting to get a little bit more confidence, and I wonder if Taylor Hall's speed on the left side of Krejci and him on the line in general can really help DeBrusk get to that level he's supposed to be at. My other reservation, is it me? I'm not really seeing like dynamic chemistry between Pasta and Krejci.
Oh no, definitely.
So
not.
like everybody always talks about how they're countrymen, and look, there was a stretch like a year or two ago when Bergeron went down for like a month and Krejci was with Pasta and Marchand, and Krejci did really well. But like when there's no Marchand in that mix and it's just them two, I don't know how much Pasta and Krejci work well together, despite their obvious skill and they are countrymen. So like, and if they do go with Bergeron, Marchand, and Smith, Hall, Krejci, Pasta, yes, you can always put Pasta with the first line when you need him to in big moments. So that's not a big deal. I just don't know. And what you said, Scott, I don't know about DeBrusk, Ritchie, and Coyle. So, look, there's going to be some tinkering, and it's what you see on Tuesday if they're all in the lineup. I'm sure Cassie will get some different looks and see what's what and talk to his players and see how everybody's feeling about things. But, the point is ultimately you're going to have 9 forwards in your top 3 lines that can score. And it's a great problem to have right now, and it's a problem that they had prior to the deadline, but for different reasons. They didn't have the scoring depth.
Can we look forward a little bit to the Bruins' schedule this week? So Tuesday they play Buffalo, so I have to assume Bjork hasn't even left town. He's just chilling here.
I didn't even think about that.
And then I don't know if Hall and Lazar are traveling on the team with the team.
No, they're driving.
They're driving. That's
they're driving
right.
themselves
separately. Yes.
So they're gonna end up playing each other the very first game after being traded, and that should be a good time for Cassidy to try out what he wants to try out. Maybe even start with a more experimental look at the lineup. So maybe try what we like, Pasta on the second line. But that's the easiest game they have this week, because then they head Thursday and Friday. They play the Islanders at home, and then Sunday they have Washington at noon. So those 3 games are going to be the real test to the Bruins and needing to get some defense back. Now, I have a question. Maybe, Scott, you know the answer to. Riley's coming from the Canada, not bubble, but the Canadian division. He has to come across the border. What is the time period he has to quarantine, or the amount of negative tests he has to get?
It's nothing, because he's also driving. He said he was
driving?
Yeah, he said he was driving himself from Ottawa.
So there's no negative test he has to get before he joins the team?
He'll have to test once he gets here, but there's
they all test every day.
Yeah, but it's not. There's no like you need 5 in a row or anything like that.
Because this used to be a concern in the beginning of the season, was traveling between Canada and the U.S. and what that would mean in terms of having to quarantine.
And the concern was even more so going from U.S. to Canada. Like Ryan Zingle, when he got traded from Carolina to Ottawa, had to sit like 2 weeks. I think the Canadian government eventually eased that down to 1 week, or might have even been 5 days or something. But yeah, driving helps eliminate a lot of those obstacles. So that's everyone's getting in their cars for their 6 or 7 hour drive or whatever it is.
Ottawa,
so,
I
think that's like 6.5 hours. I did that once
really?
way
Only
back in the day.
6.5?
Yeah,
I was
6.5 or 7.
I was thinking 8.
So Bridget brings up Mike Riley. Let's talk about him for a cup of coffee here. Last game the Bruins lost 8-1 to the Capitals with the U18 Junior Bruins lineup on defense. So let's talk about the NHL Bruins defense lineup when they're healthy with Mike Riley in the mix, okay? And you guys can talk a little about Riley and what you know about him, and we'll go from there. So, again, Coach DeFelice's defense pairings when healthy: Grizzlick, McAvoy, Riley, Carlo, Lozon, Miller. So, is that? And actually, we've been neglecting. Nothing's happened in the last half hour, right?
No,
trade-wise? Okay.
I've had Twitter up. We are past the trade deadline. Some stuff for other teams has trickled in, but Bruins have not made any last-minute moves.
So, all right. So, if this blue line is fully healthy with the addition of Mike Riley, Are they good enough to ultimately go deep on a deep run, guys?
If everything clicks, yes. That's obviously a big if, but that's how it works when you make deadline deals. Look, would it have been great if they got Matthias Ekholm instead? Sure, but he wasn't available.
Turned out.
The Predators ended up in playoff
way.
position. They didn't trade anyone, much less Ekholm. I think, Grizzly McAvoy is a legit top pairing. They've been dominant when they've been together. I think Carlo works better with a puck mover, which is why I was concerned if you didn't do anything and you were gonna have to try out like Lowe's on Carlo. I just don't think they're really a good match for each other. So Riley is that puck mover. He's a good skater. He's good on breakouts.
Good size.
He's good in transition. He can create some offense.
19 assists on the season.
Yeah. Which I think would be second most points by a Bruins defenseman this season.
And he's only 27. I mean, he's young. He's got good size. Can skate well, like you said, move the puck. So.
Yeah, he's really started to find his game over the last couple of years. He's not a shutdown defenseman. He's not. So he's not Ekholm in that way. He's not the great two-way player.
But they don't need him to be because again, you have McAvoy and Carlo.
And that's why if you put him with Carlo, Carlo's that safety net. So I think that's a good pairing.
Healthy Carlo.
I think Riley can handle those minutes, and I would trust Riley, especially once he gets his feet under him here. I think I would trust him more with those kind of minutes than Lauzon or whoever else they would move up in the lineup.
Let's not forget, Zaboral has been in the lineup for the second most games of any guy on the Bruins.
That might start changing.
And in your pairings, Zaboral is
out.
He's out.
He's out. He's getting the axe.
So
for me.
and
it's a no for me, dog.
So that's just something I think of when I look at that.
Well, the reason
I
nix him, Bridget, is because I think it's not. There's still some time for Zaboral to learn from the press box now that he's with the big club. But I really like the idea of Lauzon and Miller on that third pairing. Two big boys. They get physical. They defend well. Lauzon really seems to thrive, play his best when he's with Miller because of the leadership he brings and the communication on the ice that he offers and the toughness he brings. So, and I think that Lauzon is much better against other teams' third and fourth lines than top lines. And so, for different reasons, I like all these pairings. McAvoy and Grzelcyk, they have familiarity with each other. They can both skate and move the puck well and defend well. Carlo, obviously, Riley's not the same player as Torrey Krug, but in the same way that they can both move the puck, like you said, Scott, Carlo works well the puck mover. And then you have that shutdown and puck mover defenseman together on a second pairing, and then your third pairing is just a brute force of two tough combatants that can shut down and play rough hockey. The biggest concern for me is their health. It's like somebody brought up the other day, the Capitals and the Islanders, they have had very, very little to no injuries on the back end. And I'm watching the Bruins. Literally, the Bruins dress six defensemen against the Capitals. And McAvoy should be back any day now. I think the same with Grzelcyk. Miller is obviously out for maintenance, whatever you want to call it.
Well, he's back Tuesday, though.
Yeah,
I think,
Carlo's the one
Miller's only going to sit on back-to-backs.
Carlo is the one that concerns me long term because I don't know if he's having head side effects.
That's actually not.
Is it not?
It's not that.
Cassie said it was below the neck, so it's some other upper body.
He said
injury.
It's a separate injury. Immediately after the game that he got re-injured, or I guess a different injury, he said this is not the same as the concussion that he got from Wilson.
And one other thought on that's good news. One other thought on Grzelcyk is because we talked about him in the past. He's a walking Band-Aid. He's always getting taken advantage of.
He's down the tunnel every night.
But here's the thing though. If you put him with McAvoy, in theory, he's less prone to injury from this, ragtag third or fourth liner bearing down on him on the forecheck than he would be with McAvoy playing against more skilled players on the top line of another team. So that might be the best way to optimize the two of their skill sets and chemistry, but also keep them safe. Yeah,
and McAvoy. This is one of my favorite quotes of the season. It was probably almost a month ago at this point, where he was asked about playing with Grzelcyk, and he sort of just casually said, "We don't play a lot of defense when we're together." And he quickly kind of caught himself and was like, "I don't mean just we don't value it. I just mean we always have the puck in the offensive zone." And it was great because it's 100% true. When they're on the ice, the Bruins almost always have the puck in the offensive zone, so they're not banging bodies behind their own net, out in front of their net. They retrieve the puck, they quickly break it back up the ice. by the time they have to come back, the opponent is exhausted from chasing them all around the offensive zone. So it's like just an easy dump in. So they almost protect themselves just by how good they are, especially if you have them on the ice with the top line. Like, it's just a possession machine.
Well, what works against them is just that they play so many minutes that their bodies take a little bit more of a beating, and there's a little bit more of a toll on them just because they are out there for so long.
Yeah, but if it's a lot of offensive zone time, those are less taxing minutes than the defensive zone minutes. And, so they've both...
they're on the ice longer to get targeted or to have that injury happen.
Yeah, just gonna be smart about when you change, though. But, I think Grzelcyk is... Look, he's a smaller guy. He's gonna get banged up pretty much no matter what. And you just have to hope that he's smart enough to avoid the brunt of the hit. Look, the one the other night that knocked him out for a couple games now, and we'll see if it's any more, was just like a total freak play. Like, it was kind of like an accidental elbow to the head, it looked like. So, it wasn't like he got hammered or anything. It wasn't like he was in a vulnerable position. He kind of just went in, two guys bumped, and the way, I think they were playing the Flyers that game, the way the player sort of just like turned, kind of just accidentally caught him. So some of that's bad luck. Like, it's not a play you can really do much about. Like, if a guy happens to spin off you and accidentally catches you with an elbow, it's all right. Like, that's not like you had a target on your back or you're in a vulnerable position or anything like that.
So let me pose this to you guys, because we have about 20 minutes left, a little bit less probably. And so the Bruins have had their issues this year offensively, and they've had injuries on the back end, but they're still there. They still have, a 4-point cushion on the Rangers with games in hand, and a lot of games coming up against Buffalo down the stretch. Barring a 2011 Red Sox beer and chicken collapse, the Bruins should be well on the way to the playoffs. And you have a lot of star power on this team now. So Taylor Hall comes in. If he can start to get ignited with the roster around him and the defensively sound system that leads to offense in theory when players are going well, he should really produce well. That'll get David Krejci naturally going because we assume they'll be together. And if Jake DeBrusk, can start to find his game where he's been invisible all year, and you add Taylor Hall, the Bruins could be very scary. So, and also, you brought up Scott Curtis Lazar. He's sneaky good offensively, or has some sneaky offense. He's also very good defensively sound. And like I said to start the podcast, if you're not going to be very familiar with them, most likely for Bruins fans, go back on YouTube and just type in Curtis Lazar so you can get familiar with the way he plays. You're going to like him, and he's going to make an impact on their bottom six, most likely their fourth line.
Also, if you just want a good laugh,
oh, yeah.
I retweeted this on my Twitter account. Connor Ryan tweeted it out. When Ottawa's having the whole like hamburger thing with
Craig Anderson?
Andrew Hammond, I think.
Oh,
it was like the goalie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he got like super hot for like a couple months. Yeah. Oddly,
it was like 10-0 that he just never played again.
Yeah, it was a game against the Bruins. So fans in Ottawa started like throwing hamburgers on the ice for him and stuff. And Curtis Lazar just picked one up and started eating it.
So here's my question, Bridget. We'll start with you.
Okay.
With these new additions, if the Bruins can play to their potential and stay healthy, the most important thing.
By the way, just to throw this in, one of the late deals that was made, the Capitals got Anthony Mantha from the Red Wings. So that's a big one.
That's significant. I did not know that.
That's huge. Yeah. He was an all-star very recently.
Yeah.
Well, so now I'm going to put Bridget on the spot with that news because we just found out about
that does change things, and I think that makes me feel like Capitals Islanders you're not catching.
No, it's not about catching them. Just like when the playoffs begin and all the cards are on the table and it's a new season, if all these teams are playing well, looking at each team's depth, where do the Bruins now stand in the East Power Rankings if the playoffs were to start today?
In the East Power Rankings, I think they moved past Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh did they do anything?
They got Jeff Carter.
Jeff Carter. I don't think
of Jeff Carter. Really.
Exactly.
Hey, if it was 2013, it's a big move.
Exactly, which we're well removed from that part of his career. But I think the Bruins have made moves that get them past the Penguins. Just question still. The Capitals like we mentioned, are so healthy, and they have such a good defensive core. They have such a powerful first line and power play. I still see the Bruins struggling in the playoffs against the Capitals.
Yeah, I guess I would,
and not even just because that last game makes me feel bad about it.
I don't like. And Scott, you'll elaborate. I don't like the Capitals in goal very much, and I'm not
in goal. Yes, and we haven't talked about the Bruins situation in goal either.
To be fair, but what we can say is that they're probably in good hands either way, unless it's Darth Flater. But nothing against them. But if it's Rask or Swayman,
poor, he got hung out to dry.
Yeah, he did. But with the Capitals, I'm not in love with their goaltending situation, and I love Chara, but him and Nick Jensen, they're not that great of a third D pair, and Orlov is a defensive liability. You can take advantage of them in their own end. But the Islanders, I think the Islanders are the team to beat in the East. The way Barry Trotz has them structured.
Yeah, so like if I were doing,
and they're big.
If I were doing power rankings, I would agree. I think the Bruins have probably done enough to move ahead of Pittsburgh, and Islanders and Capitals are probably still on top. But I think what these trades have done though is they've given the Bruins a chance. Like I wrote this in a column I wrote for WEI.com. It's not impossible to envision things going right and the Bruins making a deep playoff run. Whereas a week
all
ago,
you need is a hot goaldie. Like we've seen this before.
I think they have the potential to have an offense that gets hot beyond the first line.
Agreed.
I think they have a defense that can move the puck if it's healthy, which, based on how the season has gone, is a big if. But a week ago, I would have said, man, if they do nothing at the trade deadline, it's going to be really hard to envision them making any sort of run. Heck, it would have been hard to imagine them getting out of the first round. And now I look at it and I just feel like there's a chance. There's hope.
And Scott,
you're there. You're not that far off the Islanders or Capitals, even if power ranking wise you're maybe a little behind them.
And Scott, the reason why this is really, really difficult to look into the future about is because the way the playoffs are structured this year, where we don't really necessarily know what's going to shake out, because obviously these aren't the normal divisions. It's going to be based off of points percentage, correct?
Yeah, well, so, assuming everyone plays the 56 games, and you can just go by points. And then everyone's got to get out of their division first, so you got to get through, you're going to have to get through 2 of the 3 of Islanders, Capitals, Penguins. And then once the division winners are decided, then they, I think, reseed things by points percentage, so you could face like any of the other 3 division winners, basically, once you get to that. So, yeah, I mean, look, on paper, you're still, even if we want to say you're closer to teams in your division, or even on par with them, like, on paper, you don't look like you're on the level of a Lightning or an Avalanche, but you know what? You wouldn't have to worry about those teams until the Final Four. So, like, don't worry about them right now. Yeah. Like, let's get through your division first, and there's no guarantee that the Lightning or the Avalanche are going to get through their divisions. The best team doesn't always win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, we've seen that over and over again.
We'll cross that bridge if it gets to it. And if the Bruins get to the Cup Finals, it won't matter who they're playing, because that means that the Bruins are playing great hockey, and anything can happen at that point. But about the Capitals, like I said, I think it's the Islanders, because take last game against the Caps and throw it out the door. Okay, before that game, I believe that the Bruins were 3-0-2 in their 5 games against the Caps this year, which means they took points out of all 5 meetings with the Caps until that, bogus game against them when they had no defensemen. So they play the Capitals well. And so for that reason, I think that the Bruins could easily beat the Caps in the 7-game series. You have size in Nick Ritchie. Curtis Lazar is going to add that bite as well on the 4th line. Trent Frederick will be at his ways as a 4th liner. Carlo has size. Mike Riley has size. Kevin Miller, healthy, would be huge for them in the playoffs. And then obviously McAvoy. Like, I think, and in a goal, I think they have the goalie matchup. So I have my eye on the Islanders. I'm really curious to see how the Bruins play them down the stretch with both teams with their playoff rosters intact.
Yeah, that is going to be really fun to see, because that's the team that you have to prove yourself against anyways, because you haven't been able to beat them yet. So they're sort of that boogeyman where, like, players will always downplay like whether anything like that gets into their head or whatever. But it's got it to some extent. Like, especially there was, I don't know if it was the last time they played or like 2 times ago, where they had, I think, a 2-0 lead and they blew it. They end up losing in overtime. Like, you've got to kind of get over that Islanders hump and at least start to give yourself. You've had some close games against them. It's not like you've gotten blown out every time you've played them, but to get over that hump and beat them is going to be important to do at some point down the stretch here.
So one final note before we go, and I want you guys to take on this too. I'd be remiss if we didn't mention Don Sweeney much today. So he's been criticized a lot, rightfully so, over some iffy free agent signings and not great trade deadlines, and drafting developing has been hit or miss. Look, you address 3 team needs. You don't give up a first. You don't give up a top prospect or a roster regular. How did he get Hall for a second rounder in Bjork? Did no other team have anything better to offer besides Bjork?
Well, so one thing that's come across while we've been recording this is Kevin Adams, Buffalo's general manager, is on a call with the media Monday afternoon, and just based on what I'm seeing on Twitter, he said that it would be fair to say that he was limited in terms of the teams he could trade Hall to. Taylor Hall had a full no movement clause, which might be one of the reasons he went to Buffalo in the first place, because he knew he would have, if he did get moved at the deadline, he would have full control over where he could go. And Hall, essentially said that in his press conference was, the no movement clause helped me get to Boston. So combining that with what Kevin Adams has said Monday afternoon, it sounds like Hall basically said, like, Boston's where I want to go. That's where I'm going to waive my no trade clause. Like,
you hear that, Bruins fans? Hall wants to be here.
Yeah, which is
number 71
great.
in your pamphlets.
Well, he said he was jealous of Sagan that Sagan ended up here, and he ended up winning a cup here.
Well, either way, good for Donnie. I mean, his Achilles heel has been the inability to outmaneuver his peers around the league in the GM press boxes when it comes to the valued assets at the trade deadline. Taylor Hall, make no mistake about it, was going to be the most sought after, probably forward free agent that was left on the board. Don Sweeney got him. For better or worse, he got him, and the risk is very, very little. You give up a couple middle-round draft picks and Bjork. Sorry, Bridget, about that, but
we didn't even get into that.
We did not. So
can I say one thing, too, that I saw today that we haven't touched on, but it's worth mentioning even just for a minute? Jake DeBrusk was considered to be someone who was being shopped, and the NHL Network and TSN both had him up there as somebody that people were interested in and calling about. So the decision not to move him, how do you feel about that?
I think it should give him a boost. I think that should give him a boost of confidence. Like, all right, these guys have my back. I'm going to go prove them right. And, it does give him an abundance of left wingers. Now there's 5 NHL left wingers, which is why one of them, likely DeBrusk, will probably have to go to his offside.
Yeah, you're right. It should give him some confidence. Take a lot of doubt or worry out of his mind. Look, when your name comes up in trade rumors, players will often try to say, like, oh, I don't think about it, I don't pay attention. But it's hard not to. They hear it. Like, they watch NHL Network. They're on social media or online that, going to whatever sites. Like,
DeBrusk addressed it to the media that he had heard what people were saying. So.
Yeah, it gets to them. And so I'm sure it's been on DeBrusk's mind to some extent. And so, maybe he now has peace of mind, and hopefully that helps him and gets him straightened out and focused for the rest of the year.
Another tiny little point that I wanted to make was I noticed something was going on with Bjork yesterday before the Washington Capitals game, because he came out. He was in, like, the best mood I've ever seen him in the tunnel, just, like, messing around with Marchand, smiling away. Comes out, takes warm-ups. Bleeds in the lineup, and Bjork just doesn't come out and play. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay. And he's been a scratch the past few games, which isn't unusual, but it was a lingering thought in the back of my mind, like, this could be, him getting told, hey, we actually have made a deal where you're going to end up going to Buffalo, which probably the worst case scenario for him, thinking he's going to be able to play on another playoff team, and then now he's going to go into that situation, and Lord knows what his future will be like there.
Well, his approach has to be, I'm going to a situation where now I'm going to play more and play regularly, and he has a chance to prove myself, and he has a chance to show what I can do with regular playing time and a bigger opportunity. So, it stinks. Obviously, anyone would rather be on a playoff team than, the team with the worst record in the league. But he's got to find a way to take advantage of it. I like Anders Bjork as a person. He's always been a good interview. Like, I hope it works out well for him.
And he, when he was in college, won the I'm blanking on what it's called. It's like the humanitarian award for the most public service when he was a college athlete. And he's a good person. He deserves to get his chance, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. So hopefully he ends up making the best of the opportunity in a bad situation for him.
Yeah, he's well liked in the Bruins locker room. He works hard, and look, I think it's a compliment to Anders Bjork that he's being traded. It's not so much the Bruins are giving up on him; it's that he was an asset for them that was able to bring in Taylor Hall. He had value, and that's when you're a player. Like that's a double-edged sword. It's like if they didn't value him, he would still be here in and out of the lineup. Like, and so he's going to a situation where I think he has a history with Buffalo's coach from the U.S. program or whatever, and he can get a chance to show himself in a regular role in Buffalo, and I hope he does well. So with that said.
Wait, may I squeeze in one final point? Because I'm getting them all in at the end here. Just because Curtis Lazar has been kind of the third person talked about in this situation, it's important to mention he was once a number 17 overall pick.
He can play.
In 2013. He was a number 17 overall pick, and that's kind of been something that's been looked over a little bit. So if that gives anybody a little bit more hope and gives them a little bit better idea of what he could be like. The Bruins picked up 2 first-round picks for a second-round pick and Bjork, so that's what the deal ended up being. Yeah,
Lazar can play. That's why I said, don't sleep on him. Go research his highlights. He works hard, doesn't take a shift off. So Scott's got to get out of here. Don Sweeney's speaking at 3:55. So just to recap before we go, Bruins get Mike Riley, defenseman, for 2022 third-rounder. They get Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar for Anders Bjork in the 2021 second-rounder. Thanks for listening to the Skate Pod. We'll talk to you guys next week.